All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, conference championship weekend is not over yet in college football, but the dominoes are falling left and right. Last night, fourth ranked USC lost to Utah in the Pac 12 championship game. And today, we saw the previously undefeated and third ranked TCU lose to K State in the Big 12 championship game. Now, the Horned Frogs, and I've talked about this for several weeks now, they've been walking that fine line on the razor's edge. And they've been doing it all season long with their knack for the comeback in the fourth quarter. But their luck ran out today in Arlington against Kansas State. Now, TCU did erase an 11-point deficit in the fourth quarter in this game as quarterback Hacksaw Max Duggan put this team on his back. But in my opinion, at least, you had to question some of the play calling late by TCU head coach Sonny Dykes. Now, after stopping the Wildcats with just under a minute left in this contest, TCU got the football back at around their 5 yard line with a full complement of timeouts. But Dykes opted to take the knee and play for overtime. And of course, the first thing that you're going to ask is the condition of Max Duggan, because you go back on that drive for TCU to tie the game. Max Duggan really left it all out there. And I mean, he had some big time runs. You could see he was winded at times, but you know what? It was one of those over my dead body kind of moments for TCU and Duggan. That's what it came down to. And it was one of those where, you know, from the flip side, I'm not sure, like, because like you saw him on the sideline when K State had the ball. As far as you know what, he was still trying to get his wind. He's getting something to drink, and you had to wonder, okay, was he going to be able to recover? But nonetheless, I just look at it from a momentum standpoint. TCU had all of the momentum in the world going for themselves right there. And it was a scenario where maybe Dyke should have at least tried to run the ball, maybe a screen pass, just to get a feel for that K State defense. But on the flip side, I do remember earlier in the game when K State did record a safety that did get overturned. So maybe that was also in the back of the mind of Sonny Dykes. We don't know. But nonetheless, I feel that, it was so much on the line right there. I think the Texas Christian should have at least taken a shot, taken a swing, and tried to see anything can happen. You throw the ball, you get a penalty, you're out past the 20-yard line. Maybe Kendra Miller breaks one. We don't know. And honestly, we're never going to know because of the fact that TCU took the knee and headed to overtime. The Horned Frogs got the ball to begin overtime. They got all the way down inside of the 1 yard line. Two chances from inside of the one, and two run plays were called both times with Duggan handing off to Kendra Miller. And when you hand off to a running back in that scenario, so close to the goal line, you are giving the opposing defense an opportunity to get going. You're giving the linebackers an opportunity to read that play and charge. And that is what we saw. And being that that ball was so close to the goal line, why not use one of those shots, if not both of those shots, on the quarterback sneak with Duggan? He'd shown throughout the game his physicality. So we know that he's big enough and strong enough to get it done. And TCU was denied at the goal line. K-State got the ball back and they kicked the game-winning field goal. And in retrospect, this is a second consecutive year where the Big 12 championship game, the Big 12 conference, which is known for the wide open football, was basically it came down to a defensive stand at the goal line. Last year, Baylor did it en route to knocking off Oklahoma State, and this time around, K-State did it to knock off TCU. Now, Duggan really put this team on his back today, 361 yards of total offense, 251 of those through the air, 110 on the ground, and of course, two touchdowns, one throwing and one running. But credit to this Kansas State defense as Texas Christian was just 2 of 15 on third down today. I've said it before, I will continue to say it. beating a team in a season twice is not easy. Granted, Utah did it last night with USC, but nonetheless, it's still not easy. And then, like I continue to say, winning these conference games in November and now December is not easy. And for K State, this is their first Big 12 championship since 2012, but their first outright Big 12 championship since 2003. They shared it with Oklahoma back in 2012. At that point, they didn't have a conference championship game following the defections of so many schools. They got it. You go back to 2003, they upset Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, and even in spite of the loss, Oklahoma still got through to the BCS championship game. And speaking of that, has TCU done enough to impress the committee in order to get to the college football playoff? That is going to be the million-dollar question that will obviously be answered within the next 24 hours or so. You look at TCU, they went undefeated in the Big 12 all season long, lost a very close game to a very good Kansas State team. And of course, K State is good because they won the Big 12. But nonetheless, you ask yourself, has TCU done enough? Because even when they were remaining undefeated throughout the regular season, they always had their naysayers who had this team on the outside looking in. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you look at it, USC is done. They got blown out last night by Utah, second loss of the season. So you can stick a fork in them. Alabama and Ohio State obviously did not play this weekend because they didn't win their respective divisions in their respective conferences. But nonetheless, a one-loss Ohio State team that got blown out at home last week versus Michigan. Two-loss out of Alabama team out of the SEC with a walk-off loss to Tennessee and a walk-off loss to LSU on their resume. And then you got TCU. So obviously, Georgia's playing right now. Georgia's probably going to win that game. Michigan's heavily favored tonight against Purdue, so you can go ahead and assume both of those teams are in the field of four. But TCU, Alabama, and Ohio State now vying for those last two spots. And again, I keep saying this, and I'm going to continue to say this. Obviously, my word doesn't count for anything in regards to changing the overall landscape of things, but this is why the field does not need to be expanded, because you look at the importance of these games in November and now December coming down the stretch, and how teams that everybody was questioning as far as getting in, what about this team? What about this team? They were unable to take care of their business. We saw Clemson lose last week to South Carolina. Oregon got bumped off by Oregon State. USC got bumped off by Utah. UCLA had previously got bumped off by USC. So it's one of those where at the end of the day, this is you let them lace them up for 12 games of the season. That's more than enough time to really figure out what teams have or don't have a chance. And of course, in an expanded college football playoff, we're really not going to question this about TCU. They're still in. We still wouldn't question this about USC. They're in. But you look at the importance of these games and how difficult that it is to win in your respective conference. So, of course, TCU, they've been walking the fine line of the razor's edge all season long. They're going to have to do it for at least another day to find out whether or not the committee values them enough to get in to the college football playoff. But nonetheless, an overtime loss to Kansas State is still a loss, but I still think that the committee will value that because the Wildcats are indeed a good team. So it's really going to come down to whether or not the committee values TCU over Alabama and Ohio State. And at this point, we just have to wait and see. TCU could have just solidified themselves by getting the dub today. Easier said than done, as they ran into a buzzsaw, and that is why the K State Wildcats are the Big 12 champs, and TCU is going to have to wait it out to tomorrow to find out if they're going to the playoff. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.